I honestly believe that if you create an amazing workplace culture, that's an employment differentiator, especially in the financial services space, where we know that most organizations are only focused on the almighty dollar and not the culture and not the employee experience. And so if you can be known as an organization that is successful financially, but also puts their people first, it will be very, very easy for you to recruit employees in and retain your high performers, because most organizations have crappy, dysfunctional workplace cultures. Most people have the experience of working in a bad workplace culture. They know what that looks and feels like, and it's horrendous. And so once they find one that's different, they're not going anywhere.
Hi, I'm Brandon Poe, founder of Poe Group Advisors and creator of the Accounting Practice Academy. You are listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast, where we talk about stuff in the accounting world. If you're looking to buy or sell a practice, we are the premier accounting practice intermediary firm in the industry. Check us out at pogroupadvisors.com. If you're a firm owner looking to build a more profitable practice while actually reducing owner hours, sign up for our practice management workshop, which only runs a few times per year. Learn more at accountingpracticeacademy.com. Thank you for joining Accountant's Flight Plan podcast today. And I'm really excited about today's guest because we have a topic that is of real high importance to accountants. Everyone I talk to has staffing questions about hiring and retaining. So I have Jill Christensen, and she's a former Fortune 500 corporate communications business executive with a Six Sigma green belt. Jill understands how organizations operate and what they need to do differently to attract, retain, and engage employees. She has a book called If Not You, Who? She's a global bestseller, and her popular weekly blog was named a top 100 corporate blog alongside of Apple and Microsoft. Please help me welcome top 200 global thought leader to watch in 2021, Jill Christensen. Welcome, Jill.
Thanks so much, Brandon. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, let's just jump right in. Tell me a little bit more about your background, personally, professionally, and how you became a specialist or an expert at employment engagement.
Sure. So I was in corporate America for 22 years in the New York area in the telecommunications industry. And there just came a point where I was so fed up and unhappy that I decided to move to the West Coast, to Denver, Colorado, and launch my own consulting firm. And so when I started consulting, that was the only time that I'd ever worked outside of the telecom industry. So I started picking up clients in oil and gas and retail and finance. And what I realized very quickly, Brandon, is that most organizations have dysfunctional cultures. It's not just the telecommunications industry. And after doing consulting for about 6 years, I said, you know what? This is crazy. Somebody has to fix this. Somebody's got to improve this. Somebody has to bring a solution to the table that all of these organizations can leverage. And so I started conducting a lot of research, and I wrote a book about how to create an extraordinary workplace culture, because that was one of the things that I saw in every single organization that I consulted at, is that the culture was causing people to disengage, causing people's spirits and souls literally to get chipped away, to the point where they would come to work every day and just give a fraction of what they had inside of them. And what we're seeing today is they're taking it a step further. They are quitting on companies.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, it's not really funny, but, I used to think, culture, workplace culture was kind of a nice buzzword. It was kind of a luxury, like having this really cool culture was sort of a luxury. But in the accounting industry, one thing that our clients tell us, and we have both in our brokerage business, we sell CPA firms and we coach CPAs on practice management. And there is a real scarcity of staff right now. Everyone's having trouble finding and keeping staff. So this is a very appropriate topic. So one thing I want to ask you first is, how do you define engagement? What's a engaged employee versus a disengaged employee?
Got it. So employee engagement is defined as an employee who feels an emotional connection to your organization and who trusts the senior leadership team. And so basically, you've captured the person's head and their heart. And so they feel a loyalty, they feel a sense of pride. They love going to work every day. We know that people who are engaged sell more, they provide better customer service, they stay longer, they're more productive, they're more creative, and their disengaged counterparts waste a lot of time. And if they're really disengaged, they'll even go as far as sabotaging the organization by spreading rumors, engaging in office gossip, engaging in office politics. And so it's really the difference between, an employee who's completely in it and is giving you the shirt off their back every day, and somebody who is just showing up and doing what they have to do to get by, to not lose their job and to get their job responsibilities completed. And it's an enormous difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed in the accounting profession in particular, you've got this culture of high owner hours, and it spreads through the offices. So the owner works a lot and expects the people to work a lot. And there's a sort of a scarcity mindset in that, hey, we've got to take these clients. If a client wants to do business with us, we have to take them, we have to serve them. And, there are no boundaries around time, and there are no filtering system for clients. And I see that as like a big problem in our industry. I'd love to get your take on just the hours and sort of that expectation that the sometimes the owner or the leadership has that maybe, they're modeling for the employees. And
They are.
yeah. So
See this happen, Brennan, in law firms. Okay, so accounting firms and law firms sort of mirror one another in the engagement space. And what that is all about is that typically, and I know we're generalizing here, but sometimes generalizations are true. Many people who are leaders in the accounting space, in the financial services space, in the legal space, they're very intelligent, but they tend to be more left-brained, right? And it's why they're in these industries. So they're thinking about the almighty dollar, right? And the bottom line. The left side of the brain is the people, the employees. And so we've got tons of senior leaders in these industries who really put the client and the bottom line, right? How much money we're making at the end of the day first over the engagement or happiness of their employees. And, it's interesting that you said role modeling, because the definition of culture is how we do things here. And there is nobody in an organization who sets the stage more for how we do things here than the senior leadership team. And many senior leaders don't realize this, but most employees are constantly watching the senior leaders, watching their managers, what they say, what they do, how they dress. Because if you aspire to be in the corner office in your firm or in any firm, you are going to emulate the senior leaders, right? Because you're thinking they're teaching us, they're showing us how to do things to make it to the highest level, in our industry. And so, I always say that it is critical that senior leaders role model the culture that they want in their organization. They can't say, we want you to have work-life balance. We put employees first. We want you to take all of your vacation days, and then be working all weekend or sending out emails at 2:00, in the morning. And so it really is the leadership's responsibility, again, to understand at the end of the day, I get that it's important to be in the red, right? You can't, be in the black. You can't be in the red and keep your doors open, right? The bottom line, most organizations exist to turn a profit for their shareholders, right? And if you're not a publicly traded company, you do have to survive, and that means you need to do well from a financial standpoint, right? I completely get that. But the truth of the matter is, the only thing that really differentiates one accounting firm from another, one law firm from another, are your people, your employees. And so many times I think that senior leaders are getting this mixed up in reverse, right? They say we're going to put the customers first and or prioritize our bottom line profits. But you wouldn't have those customers or those profits if you didn't have amazing people working for you, because it's your employees who drive that customer experience, be it positive or negative. And I think many times senior leaders, even outside of the accounting and financial and legal areas, forget this. and the focus is on bottom line results and customer satisfaction. Well, that's all well and good, but they keep forgetting about who's generating that or not. And it's really the experience that your employees are creating for your customers.
Yeah.
And how productive they are based on how engaged they are.
And I've read sort of estimates on what it costs for turnover. It's really expensive. Turnover is a killer, and especially in professional services.
Absolutely. It's nightmarish. It can be anywhere between like $50,000 to $75,000 and up.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that right now, it's an employee's job market. Employees can write their ticket and basically get hired anywhere. And, it's typically not your low performers who leave. It's typically your high performers, because we know that they have confidence and, they take more risks, and they're willing to leave a job knowing that they're going to find an excellent job very quickly. And so, now is not the time for organizations to not pay attention to their culture, because
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to wrap this back into your book. So you just wrote a book called Remote 101 about engaging remote workers. And one of the things that we've seen in accounting firms in particular is more and more are going remote. I've had one client tell me that they lost a staff person because the staff person wanted to work remotely, and they didn't have that option. My client didn't have that option at the time. So can you tell us a little bit about engaging remote workers, virtual workers?
Exactly. So this is critical because, people say the future of work. Okay, the future of work is today. This work environment that we've got right now, this hybrid environment where most organizations have half of their employees in the office and half working remotely, that's typically the split that we're seeing. That is not going away. And so to the extent that accounting firms in the financial services industry can be more flexible, they will have a better chance of retaining their strong workers and recruiting strong workers into their ranks. And so when we talk to remote workers, I think it's not a secret. People absolutely love working from home. And we just proved out the greatest social experiment of all time. So if you had told me that in a 24-hour period, the world was going to start working remotely and that it was going to be a success, I would have told you I don't believe it. But the truth of the matter is, it was. And employees know it because they were a part of it. So Brandon, to this dismay of many senior leaders, remote work works. Remote workers are as productive and their engagement levels are higher because they have finally been given the flexibility that they have been clamoring for decades. Now, it happened by chance, right? Now, so they love working from home, but here are the things that they say are missing. Remote workers say they lack connection, they lack communication, and they lack collaboration. So needless to say, when you're not physically co-located with your colleagues, the communication that you hear, right? The stuff that you hear in the hallways, the stuff that you pick up on, you just sitting in a conference room after a meeting and continue to talk to people, all that's gone, it's missing. Also, the ability to easily collaborate, right? To go into one another's offices, to tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm working through an issue. I wonder what you think about this. And then also that sense of connection. So we really took it for granted that sense that people have the need to feel connected to one another and a part of something bigger than themselves was actually being fulfilled because we were all co-located and we didn't even realize it. And now that we're separated, people feel disconnected from their team, from their organization, and many times just from the goals and mission and purpose of the company.
So how do you reconcile that? How do you help bring that back? I know, so I'll just do a experience share. So our team works pretty much 50-50, like you said. And we've got a remote team, we've got a team here in the office. I love to collaborate with my team. Like I love to just get in a conference room and brainstorm and get ideas from everybody. We're a very creative team. At certain points of the year, there's a lot of thought leadership creation and all sorts of things. And I'm always amazed at the ideas I get from my team. And I think we all like that collaboration. I bring my people into the office for those meetings. It's not always possible because some of my team is, across the country, but, how can we virtually replace some of that?
Absolutely. So I love the idea that you have of at least several times a year bringing everybody together physically, even if you have to distance yourselves, right? There's something that you just cannot replicate when people are in a room together versus not in a room together. So Brandon, one of the easiest things that a team leader can do is focus groups. So, let's say a team leader has an important decision that needs to be made and they know it's going to impact the employees. The worst thing in the world you can do, especially nowadays when people are feeling isolated, is to go into a conference room or just, sit in your home office and make that decision on your own and then let people know what you decided. It is so easy to pull people together in groups of 8 to 10 to 12 and say, we're brainstorming how to solve this issue in our firm. Or we think we're going to change our benefits plan next year. But before we do an RFP, employees, it's going to impact you. So we want to know what you think, right? What do you like about our current plan? What do you not like? What benefits do you use? What benefits would you love to see us provide? And again, voice, they say voice of the customer. This is a voice of the employee. And so, and again, you don't have to bring people together on a quarterly off-site retreat. You could just know we've got a decision that's being made inside of the organization. Let's enable employees to have a voice. Let's let their voices be heard. Let's show to them that we have a culture where it's safe to say, and to encourage people to speak up. And Brandon, even if people don't take you up on the offer and participate in the focus group, the fact that they had the ability to, and they can see that you are trying to build a two-way communication culture where conversations and dialogues are happening inside of your firm and leaders are not just making decisions and then passing them down to employees, that will go a really long way to catapulting employee engagement.
Yeah, that's, I like the way you specified all of that. Like sometimes you do things, you know it works, but you don't know why it works. And you sort of put some words to why that's important. Mm-hmm. So we, another thing that we did this year, and this was sort of an accidental discovery, we all went to a conference together. So it was in Las Vegas, which made it kind of fun. Mm-hmm. And it was the AICPA Engage conference. And I ended up just sort of, it was started out to be like 2 or 3 of us. And then somebody said, well, I want to go. And I was like, well, if they go, then this person needs to go. And so I just finally just said, you know what, we're just all going to go. And not only did we have a great time together, mm-hmm. but our booth at that conference, we had so many people at our booth that when people came through the conference room, mm-hmm. There was just a buzz around our booth, and we ended up having like the best conference turnout that we've ever experienced.
That's amazing. And you also know what else you did? You probably didn't even realize it. You enabled people to get to know one another outside of the workplace. And employees tell us, when I know my colleagues on a work basis, a work level and a personal level, it causes me to feel a deeper sense of team, a deeper sense of connection, right? Because I know them. And so, by taking people off site and doing something like that, and I love the fact that it was work related, right? You didn't just take people golfing or bowling. You actually did something that was also helping to drive your firm forward. But then they also had that time to connect and get to know one another. And that is absolutely going to drive a greater sense of teamwork and this we're all in it together mentality in your firm, which again causes people to feel connected to something bigger than themselves, which drives engagement.
Cool. I feel like I'm doing something right then. Well, what have you noticed are, you've worked with the accounting industry some, and have you noticed anything that's particular? You kind of lumped them in with law firms. Anything else that we hadn't already discussed that you've seen particular to accounting firms?
Yeah, I think really, I see this amazing resistance to allowing people to work from home. And it's really going to come back to bite organizations that lay down the hammer that way. Because again, it's very much an old school mentality thinking. And that thinking is, I want you physically in front of me. I want to be able to see you working in order for me to believe that you're doing your job and being productive. And employees have known for decades, it's just not the truth, right? When you give me that flexibility, when I don't have to spend time commuting, when I can shut off all the distractions because I'm in my home office, I can get a heck of a lot done. And I'm just happier in general because I might be sitting there doing it in my sweats, petting my golden retriever, walking to my refrigerator and eating lunch or snacking throughout the day, right? It's enjoyable being at home. Home is a lot of people's sanctuary. And so I think to the extent that senior leaders in the finance industry are not open to allowing their people to work from home, they're going to see more and more hiring issues in the future. And you may be at risk of losing your high performers, because the smartest organizations, again, are going to stick with this hybrid environment where they at least allow people to work from home several days a week.
Well, it's funny because you talk about like they don't trust that the work is getting done. Well, I've managed a remote team for a long time. We've been remote since 2009. We've had remote people, and you just change how you measure what they're doing. You only look at results. I mean, I don't care when people work. I don't care how many hours they work, quite honestly. I care that they get the job done and the customer is happy.
Exactly.
And if that's getting done, I don't care what it takes.
That's you. And that's a sign of a progressive leader, right? Again, we have a lot of senior leaders today in the world who are very old school. They've been in their roles for 30, 40, 50 years, right? And they're just used to things being done a certain way. And so it's interesting. I had an accounting firm out of California call me a few months ago and say, Jill, we're losing accountants left and right, and we don't know what's wrong. And I said, well, is there anything that you can put your finger on? And they're like, yeah, we're not allowing them to work from home. And several people have said that that's a deal breaker for them. And I said, well, did they work at home during the pandemic? Like when nobody was going back to the office? And they said, yes. I said, and was your business successful? And they said, yes. And they said, but they can't do their jobs from home, indefinitely. And I said, why not? Right? It's just that culturally, the way they're used to doing things here is that everybody is in the office working. And so, people don't like change. They like to cling to what they know. They'd rather deal with the devil they know than the devil they don't. And so for a lot of senior leaders, this is a really tough proposition for them, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And Brandon, what we're seeing is you've got senior leaders now who are reneging on their promises, right? Senior leaders who initially said, okay, the entire company can be remote forever. And now they're pulling back on that and saying, you want to know what? Now that COVID is, settling down a bit, we've changed our minds. And now we want everyone to come in 2 to 3 days a week. And that's causing tremendous angst amongst employees, because the definition of employee engagement is I trust my senior leadership team. And if they're going back on promises that they made to me for really no good reason, because we know remote work works, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So let me ask my next question. You've got some tips to help prevent employee burnout. Can you share those? Just talk about a burnout a little bit and how to help with that.
Absolutely. So we touched on it earlier. One of the most important things an organization can do is ensure that the leaders and role models are role modeling the boundaries that you've set in your organization. So let's say you have, and again, I understand as a businesswoman that at the end of the day, business needs dictate, right? So if we're working on a major project, the last 2 weeks, we might be working 80 hours a week, right? But you want that to be not the norm, but what happens when you're in a fire drill. Most organizations operate in fire drill mode year round, and it's incredibly toxic to people. And so we need senior leaders to take their vacation days. We need senior leaders to not work on weekends, unless there's an emergency that's going to impact the organization, the bottom line, a customer, et cetera. We need senior leaders to be reasonable about when they stop working each day. 6 o'clock would probably be a great cutoff time. And so, employees are burned out because they're emulating the behavior of the senior leaders in their organization because they believe that that's what's expected of them and they don't want to fall behind the 8 ball, right? They want to be towing their weight, if you will. They want to be keeping up with their colleagues and their workload. I think also, there's a fascinating phenomenon that happens in business. It's amazing to me. We basically know that every senior leader started at the bottom, right? And they worked their way up through the organization to the corner office. Well, where along the way did you forget how much work it actually takes to get something done, right? I see all of the time.
Yeah.
And this landed on me in corporate America. Oh, Jill, we need you to launch the intranet site. You have 4 weeks. Really? Now, I'm not looking for a year, but that's unreasonable, right? It means that people are going to be stressed and burned out and jumping through hoops. And we do this to people, but if that leader was a management associate or a first level manager, they would also have the same reaction. But it's interesting how, like, when you get to the top, you have this amazing pressure to make money and to be successful and to meet your goals or exceed your goals. And because of that, requests come down to staff members that are kind of sometimes pretty ridiculous. And, then here's the worst part. You don't want to disappoint, right? So everybody jumps through hoops and you execute on that ridiculous timeline. And then guess what? The leadership team is like, oh, they can do this. They can pull off these miracles. And they keep handing out work along those lines. And it's incredibly toxic. And then you have organizations that are in fire drill mode all the time, right? They're not proactive. They're just always reacting to things, which causes a ton of stress and burnout and angst on the average worker.
Yeah. Life's too short. Life's too short. I mean, I don't want to work that hard and I wouldn't expect anyone else to. So, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't think you're necessarily the norm. You know what I'm saying? Enlightened leaders get it. They're aware. They understand what's going on their team. They have, open and honest communication with their team members. They put themselves in their employees' shoes before making requests. They look at things realistically. And many leaders, again, all their sights are 100% on the bottom line. Whatever we have to do to turn a profit as quickly as possible, that's what we're going to do. And I want people on the team who are going to step up.
Well, it might be counterintuitive to a lot of our listeners, but what I'll say is, we've been selling CPA firms since 2003. And one observation that I've made, and I've mentioned this many times on my podcast, the firms that have the owners who have the most balance, who end up taking the 3-week vacation or the 60 days off a year or whatever it is, those are the people who end up with the most successful firms. And it might not sound like that would be what you would expect, but I've seen that pattern over and over and over again. It's in the short term, it might not work out that way, but in the long term, that's what I've seen.
Agreed. It's not about working longer and harder. It's about working smarter and more strategically, right? Yep. And it's about giving your people some slack and listening to their needs. And one of their needs is flexibility and telecommuting. They want this, and providing those things to your people, because when your employees are engaged, they're more productive, right? Yep. And so you can get more out of people with less time in the office if their needs are being met. And if you've created an extraordinary workplace culture that they can't imagine leaving, they're going to give you their all. They're going to give you the shirt off their back. And so, like you said, you're going to end up making up for it anyway. And you're going to have a much happier, inspired, motivated workplace of people.
Yeah. It's not an either or decision. It's not either I have this balance and the bottom line suffers. It's to me, it's like, if you want a better bottom line, this is what you need to do.
Agreed. And we have
Yeah.
all the data in the world, Brennan, that shows this.
Yeah.
So organizations in the top 10th percentile of employee engagement outperform their peers 147% in earnings and are growing at a rate 90% faster than their competition.
Wow.
Because when you have every employee running on all cylinders, giving you the shirt off their back every day, going above and beyond the call of duty, I mean, you can't help but succeed.
Yeah. And it's not like you're forcing them to do that. They're doing it because they want to, if you've got them in the right role. I mean, you've got to have people in the right role for sure.
Yep.
But
They're doing it because they trust the leadership team, right? And because they trust the leadership team, they want to show up every day in amazing ways. And they do it because they feel that emotional connection to the organization. They feel connected to something bigger than themselves. And everybody wants to be on a winning team.
yeah, love it. All right. So let's talk about hiring. What solutions do you have for firms that are struggling to hire?
Um, I honestly believe that if you create an amazing workplace culture and you can write that on your shingle and you've got your employees shouting that from the rooftops, that's an employment differentiator, especially in the financial services space, where we know that most organizations are only focused on the almighty dollar and not the culture and not the employee experience. And so if you can be known as an organization that is successful financially, but also puts their people first, it will be very, very easy for you to recruit employees in and retain your high performers. Because most organizations have crappy, dysfunctional workplace cultures. Most people have the experience of working in a bad workplace culture. They know what that looks and feels like, and it's horrendous. And so once they find one that's different, they're not going anywhere. And again, once you've got once you are a great place to work, you've got all the right in the world to put that in your job descriptions, to advertise that, to have your employees talking about what a great firm you are on the Glassdoor website and on social media, on LinkedIn. And so, it's really about creating an extraordinary workplace, because here's what I know for sure. Throwing money at people doesn't work. It just doesn't. Because the truth of the matter is, the statistic is absolutely amazing. We know that when an employee comes to a leader and says, I'm going to quit, or I've accepted a job in another place, and management gives that person either a bonus to stay or a massive increase or stock options or whatever that looks like, but it's usually a financial incentive, the person stays. 93% of those employees still quit in the next 6 months.
Wow. That's a really high number.
Nothing to do with the money. They weren't, because most people are not underpaid. And I say to all organizations, never underpay your employees relative to local market, right? Everyone's got to be paid a local market rate. So then no one can say, well, I'm quitting because you're not paying me enough. But it's never about the money. It's about the culture. It's about the environment in which you are asking me to do my job. Or it can also be about my crappy supervisor. Right? So we know that many times people don't leave companies, they leave supervisors. And so it's critical that in an organization, all of your supervisors are upskilled, that they all know about the importance of creating engaged teams, that they have the skills to have a conversation that might be fraught with conflict, right? That they can do these things so they feel comfortable, so that they execute on them appropriately, so that the employee's experience at work is not hampered because they have a manager who doesn't know how to lead.
It'd be interesting to know if, I don't know if there's any data on this, there probably is, but it seems like if you have that kind of culture, not only do you attract plenty of workers, but you attract the best workers. You attract the A players in the industry that you're in or in the market that you're in. And the difference between that person and just an average person is a lot more than people realize.
Yes, I've read a statistic that a high performer does 5 times the amount of work as an average worker. Now, don't get me wrong, right? we can't have an organization of all high performers. You wouldn't survive, right? It would be so competitive and cutthroat. And I believe, I'm not sure about that, but I believe you do need people, in the trenches who are just getting the job done solidly, right? And they've got a positive attitude, and they're a team player, right? So they're doing their job solidly. But then we're going to have your high performers, because the truth of the matter is those people are your bench strength. Those people are the people who are going to end up being on your senior leadership team, who you are grooming to be the leaders of your organization in the future.
Yeah. All right. I got a few more questions for you and we'll let you go.
Okay.
Books. If you were going to recommend one book to our listeners, what would that be?
Oh my gosh. So it's interesting. I have stopped, believe it or not, reading business books. And here's why, Brandon, because I can't read a business book without then applying everything I know, and like redoing the strategy in my business. I can't read a self-help book with then making like a list of the 10 things that I'm going to improve in myself. So it's like, I've got enough pressure leading a business single-handedly, right? That I've honestly put the books, I said to myself, Jill, put the books on the sideline for a while. The last couple of books I read, though, were about how to manifest money, most interestingly enough. And so, how to use, your mind and what you think, not what you do necessarily, but how you think about money, your relationship with money, to bring more money into your life and into your business. So, but I read that last January, so I don't think that counts.
Okay. All right. Well, any good beach reads that you want to share?
No, no, because that's the problem. When I'm on vacation, and I'm excellent about taking about 5-week-long vacations a year, I do not want to think. I don't want to make decisions. I don't want to have to recall. It's one of the reasons why I don't watch movies, because I can't follow a movie. And I'm like, you know what? I'm supposed to be enjoying myself. And it's too much for me.
Gotcha. All right. Fair enough.
I put my iPod headset in and I listen to music, and I listen to the ocean crashing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just get lost in the moment of
nice.
Yeah. How about
Love
you?
it.
What good book have you read recently?
One of my favorite, one of the best vacation books I ever read was called The Cave and the Light. It was about the impact that it was really a deep read, but I enjoyed it. It was about how Plato and Aristotle affected Western civilization from the time that they were alive up to now. Pardon?
That's how you relax?
Yeah, it was, I got into that book.
Well, I'm glad that you loved it.
It's a lot of history. I do enjoy history. So
I like history as well.
So
but rather than reading a historical book, I'd rather like travel to Europe and go to historical sites.
Yeah.
That I love.
Yeah. I read that book in St. Lucia though. That was I didn't read it the whole time. I mean, but it was nice. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So, all right. So next question, advice. What's one bit of advice or life lesson you'd like to share with our listeners?
When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. So I think many times in life, people tell us through their words and actions who they are. And we just want to really believe in people and think that everyone's wonderful and, rooting for us and behind us and all of this. And the sad truth is, it's not the truth, right? There are absolutely people out there who, don't want to see people succeed, who don't have the best in mind for others. And so I just really feel like that, when somebody disappoints us, lies to us, lets us down, doesn't follow through, I think many times we think, oh, it's just a misstep, right? They're going to follow through next time. They're going to be true to their word. And what I've realized in life is that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So I've given people 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th chances. And at the end of the day, they really don't change inherently who they are, right?
Yeah.
person either has integrity or they don't. They follow through on their word or they don't. They are accountable or they're not. They have a strong work ethic or they don't, right? People really kind of are who they are. And when you see a glimpse in somebody that isn't what you're looking for or what you want in your corporation or in your life, yes, you can try to work with them to develop them if you're a manager. But if that doesn't work, I say cut the cord.
Yep.
Move on. I think a lot of people stick with companies, people, homes, relationships, right? A lot longer than they should, because they keep thinking, oh, the person's going to change, or, oh no, it was just a misstep this time. They're really not that way. No, they kind of really are.
Yeah. That reminds me of an expression: the spots on the leopard do not change.
Yep. So I've learned that. I've had a lot of disappointment in other people in my life because I've given them, again, not only that second chance, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And so at this point in my life, I just realized when you show me who you are, when you let me down or disappoint me, if I continue to stay in any type of relationship with you, personal or work, it's probably going to happen again.
Yeah.
It is going to happen again. And so depending on how big of a disappointment that is, then I get to choose, do I want this person in my life, in my world, in my workplace, or am I better off cutting the tie sooner rather than later?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't drag it. I agree with that.
But a lot of people drag it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's just painful, right? It's just, you're just extending the pain.
Yep.
So,
and a lot of people stay in workplace cultures that they despise.
Yeah.
When an organization shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So
I would have told me that at the 10 years of age.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have though.
Well, sometimes, I got to bring this up because I was thinking this just recently. So my late grandfather, I didn't know at the time just how much influence he had on me, but I didn't realize it. I'm 51 years old, and I did not realize it until I was 51 years old, that the things that he was telling me at age 10 and 12 did sink in. They were just below the surface. I wasn't aware of them. But then, so it does sit back there and the seeds germinate, but sometimes it takes forever.
Yeah, but that's fantastic. As long as they germinate, that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, this has been a really enlightening, fun conversation, Jill. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. And I hope your listeners have picked up a lot of great tips and are going to go forth and do things a little bit differently.
I'm sure they will. Well, if they want to connect with you, how would they best do that?
So my company is called Jill Christensen International. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, but I work all around the globe. My website is jillchristensenintl.com. Also, my books are available on Amazon. And I encourage anyone who's going to embark on an employee engagement journey or who cares about improving your culture to take a look at some of those resources. I've also got a weekly blog on my website that poses a business problem every single week and a business solution. So I believe that blog can absolutely help you as an organization become a better organization, or you as an individual become a better manager or leader.
Awesome. Well, I'm just going to say one more time to the accountants out there that own firms, workplace culture is going to be a bigger and bigger and bigger deal in your practice, because this employee scarcity that we have, it's not going away. And so there's going to be real competition for people. You got to get the culture right. If you want to succeed, you got to get the culture right. So thank you, Jill.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right. See ya. Thanks for listening to the Accountant's Flight Plan podcast. If you like what you heard today, please follow us so that you can get updates when new episodes are released, and share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. You can also follow Poe Group Advisors on social media. Please visit our website for more information at poegroupadvisors.com.